Welcome, everyone, to our AARP Illinois virtual event. I'm Helen, a proud AARP Illinois volunteer, and I'm thrilled you're joining us today. Our mission at AARP is to improve the quality of life for all as we age through advocacy, service, and information that foster positive social change. AARP is dedicated to creating a brighter and more secure financial future for individuals, advocating for retirement savings programs that enable all workers to save for their future. Our efforts aim to empower individuals to take control of their financial journey with information, knowledge, and resources. Thank you for joining us for today's Financial Security virtual event. We hope you will feel more equipped as you navigate your financial future with confidence.
Good morning. Welcome to Long-Term Care Insurance, a financial safety net for seniors with AARP Illinois. My name is Jeff Scott, Associate State Director for AARP Illinois, and we're thrilled to have you with us today. This virtual event, a part of our mission to improve life for those 50 plus, will delve into adult guardianship, its legalities, balancing safety and autonomy, and explore alternatives like limited guardianship and supported decision-making. To shed light on this important topic, we have our special guest, Steve Anderson, an elder law attorney and contractual lobbyist for AARP Illinois. Welcome, Steve, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. I'd like to remind our Facebook and YouTube viewers that you can ask questions and share comments in the social media feeds with our guests today. We'll do our best to address any of your questions or comments as possible during our conversation. Today's event is designed to foster a deeper understanding of long-term care insurance and elder law, offering seniors and their family caregivers insights into effectively planning for the future with legal and financial safety. Keep in mind that the specifics of elder law may vary in jurisdictions, so consulting with an elder law attorney or financial advisor is recommended for personalized guidance. Now let's get right to some questions, Steve. How does long-term care insurance fit into legal planning for seniors, especially in terms of asset protection and estate planning?
Yeah, that's an excellent opening question for us. And even before I answer that, I want to add one prefatory note to that, which is that today we're going to be talking about this, but we don't know who's listening. And the folks who are listening may be in Illinois, which is where I am and where Jeff is, but it's also possible that they might be listening in other jurisdictions. So understand that I am not giving you state-specific advice. In fact, I'm not giving you advice in the legal sense at all. I'm giving you general overviews on concepts that mostly fit with every state, but in a way don't fit with any state because I'm not being specific about that. So I want you to be aware of that. And number two, the thing that I like to emphasize most in these talks that we have is it's going to be okay. Like if you find out at the end of this that, oh my gosh, I think long-term care insurance is the right thing for me, but you don't have it, it's going to be okay. All these things are set up as options. They are not requirements. So remember that as we go through this. Oh, and I have a third thing for today. I don't sell insurance. So this is not about me or anybody else selling you long-term care insurance. But to answer your question, Jeff, so it's an excellent question to think about how does this fit in? Because it's really one tool in your toolbox to protect your assets potentially and to improve the quality of your life should you need to go into a nursing home. So long-term care insurance, like any other insurance, is something you kind of hope you never need, right? You buy it with the idea that you're going to pay for it, but maybe you'll never ever need to use it. But in the event that circumstances do require you or a loved one to be in a nursing home, it's going to hopefully soften that blow. One of the things that people do use long-term care insurance for is to protect your assets if you go into a nursing home. So instead of you having to spend your own personal savings, money, whatever investments, instead you have this policy that will pay for a period of time, probably not forever, that the benefits that you need to stay in that nursing home. One of the ways that people try to do that is to balance that against the benefit that we all are entitled to, which is Medicaid. So Medicaid will also do the same thing, but it will only do that if you're out of assets. So if after you've spent down your assets. So the idea that some people employ is to say, I'll buy a policy that lasts for 5 years. That 5 years, the policy will protect me. And in that time period, I will transfer my assets, which is a very careful, you have to be very careful in doing that so you don't break any laws. But I will try to transfer my assets away so that at the end of 5 years, when Medicaid will no longer look to my assets, then I smoothly move into Medicaid coverage. That's an option that some people use. Now, 5 years is a long time in a nursing home. So you may not, I mean, no disrespect, but any of us may not last that long. The good news is that long-term care insurance, if you choose to buy it, is that it provides you with probably a higher level of care, at least at the outset, because it's purely private. So you can enjoy that benefit as well. So as you think about it, and as I try to answer that question, and I'm being a little long-winded, it's both an estate planning tool, but it's a quality of life tool as well.
Right. Great insight. As you were talking, I wanted to, there's a question, because I read an article the other day, and I'm wondering if it impacts, what are the potential legal ramifications of not having long-term care insurance? I know you said it's a part of maybe your tool bag, but as you age, if you don't have it, are there legal ramifications, I guess, for you or maybe your loved ones as you need to go into possibly a long-term care situation?
Right. And it's like I said, it's one tool in your toolbox, but it's not a mandatory one. So legally, you don't have to have it. It is not something that you're required to have to protect yourself, your loved ones, your assets. But it is an option. And the big question becomes, you're going to pay for it potentially for a long time if you buy it young. And so what might happen is you end up paying a lower price, but for a very long time. And then it's a question if you use it or not. So it's really less a legal, more a financial question of whether or not this is valuable. Because as I said, legally, you don't have to have it.
Right. And I personally, I used to work for the Department of Insurance, so I heard a lot about long-term care and denials because the Illinois Department of Insurance takes care of those denials or reacts to denials. What role does an elder law play in addressing disputes or denials in long-term care insurance? I guess, what does one do if they get denied?
Right. So if and I'm assuming, we're talking about a situation where you've now had the long-term insurance, you now applied for it when you really needed it, and they're telling you no, for whatever reason. That's where an attorney can be critical. Yes, the Department of Insurance can investigate, but it's a government agency that does a lot. We have an excellent department, an excellent director, but that's not everything that they do. That's when hiring an attorney can be worth an investment on your part because you will have to pay that attorney. But at the same time, they are dedicated solely to you and solely to your case. So they can usually delve into it quite a bit more than the Department of Insurance in any state. I'm not singling out Illinois, that in any state can. So that's someone, when you pick that attorney, make sure you're picking an attorney that is familiar with long-term care insurance and insurance litigation in general, because you're going to want somebody who speaks the same language as the insurance adjusters do.
That's a fine point, but that's very important. How can seniors protect themselves legally when transitioning from in-home care to facility care under long-term care insurance policies?
So the most important thing I would say legally on that, and this is true on any of those transitions, is that you have your planning documents in place and that you share those documents with the long-term care insurance provider. Because typically, if you're going in, that means that someone else needs to make your decisions for you. So that is typically a healthcare power of attorney for, like I said, healthcare and financial. Now in Illinois, we have two separate ones. In other states, they might be combined. But let's just say a power of attorney where you have picked someone to advocate and speak on your behalf. And the reason it's important to consider here in the realm of long-term care insurance is that you're going to be interacting with that insurance company, so that adjuster or whatever they might call them. When you're doing that, you need to make sure that they recognize that the person you've picked is the person that they can talk with about that. And sometimes it takes a few hoops, to get them convinced, because they are legitimately very concerned that they're not violating you, the person who's going into the nursing home, your rights. And so they want to be, they want to protect your privacy. They're doing the right thing, but sometimes it takes a little effort. So when doing that, one, have those. I always advocate everyone, no matter your age, even if you're a 20-year-old, I think that you should have powers of attorney. But certainly in this realm, I think it's important to have them. That way, if there's a problem, again, you can also turn to an elder law attorney to say, they're not, this insurance company isn't recognizing the person I've picked. Well, they can help with that too.
Right. I'm going to go to our first question here. We have from Facebook, or this one from YouTube. And again, I'm going to put this out there. If you've got a question, please put it in the comment section. We'll try to get to it. So this is, does long-term care help you stay in your home rather than go to a nursing home?
Great question. And thank you for it. So the answer is generally no. I can envision ideas where you can protect your assets, like your home, through the use of the long-term care insurance. Maybe be able to transfer the home ultimately to someone that you want to keep it and preserve it. But generally, no. The answer is going to be that the long-term care insurance is going to pay for your nursing home stay or a skilled nursing facility. I just use nursing home as a generic for that. Right. So it's going to pay for that. But does that mean you can never leave the nursing home, come back home and visit? You can, but they're not going to cover you if you have the ability to live outside the nursing home. So generally, you should focus it not on staying at home. It's mostly about being in a nursing home, but it could be about protecting the home. So that is important to keep in mind.
Gotcha. I'm going to ask a question now. In a lot of folks are in the fortunate position that they can, give something down to their lineage through an inheritance. So how can elder law help in understanding and planning for the potential impact of long-term care insurance on inheritance and legacy planning?
Yeah, and that's actually exactly what this is oftentimes about. I mentioned in the beginning, transferring out assets. So to answer that, let me step back one piece, which is, how do you qualify for Medicaid? And I think I answered that a little bit in the beginning, but to be more specific, you have to run out of your own assets in order to qualify for Medicaid, which means you can't give them away. You have to spend them away. You have to use them for your long-term care and your other expenses of life, but you can't give it away. So now let's say you were really hoping, you have grandkids, you have 4 grandkids, and you wanted to give them, money upon your death. Well, Medicaid and spending down means there won't be anything left, right? Which is true. So you won't be able to gift that. And I'm sure your grandkids would much rather see you have a healthy quality of life than receive money. But is this a way to do both? And the answer is it can be. Because what can happen is there's what I call a 5-year look back period on Medicaid. That's the time period where Medicaid, the department, is going to look back at your asset transfers. And they will. They'll ask for your bank account records for the last 5 years to qualify. But they only look back 5 years. So if on 5 years and 1 day you made a transfer, knowing you were going into a nursing home and knowing you had a plan that lasted 5 years, then you could transfer away a great deal of your assets. I wouldn't recommend all of them, but you can transfer away a lot of them and still qualify. And the way you did that was by using this long-term care insurance as the gap coverage, right, between when you were living healthily on your own and when you're transitioning to Medicaid. This insurance can cover the gap, allowing you to make that transfer legally. Nothing I'm telling you is illegal. I'm telling you legal ways to transfer money.
Right.
So that's one possibility for that question.
I think this, and I'm seeing a trend here. Planning seems to be the theme when you're undergoing this type of stuff. I got another YouTube question for you. What do you get with long-term care insurance? What coverage? What are the typical costs for coverage?
Sure. Great question again. So what do you get? You get a monthly benefit, and that benefit is defined in dollars. And so you pick that, you with the help of hopefully a licensed insurance agent in your state who's good at long-term care insurance. Don't just pick your auto insurer because you've always worked with them. Pick somebody who knows this field. But what they'll do is they'll define a benefit for you on a monthly basis. And that can be almost any amount up to an undefined amount where you say, well, I want a policy that just says they'll cover it all, no matter what it is. That's probably, the Cadillac or a platinum version of it. It might be very expensive, but that's possible. I would say it's more normal for a benefit to be in, the $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 range, which is kind of what you're talking about on a monthly basis for nursing home care. So that's the kind of coverage. There will also typically be an elimination period at the beginning. So you get, again, to set that. And that elimination period is how long you have to be in a nursing home before coverage kicks in. So that can be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And again, if you pick the shortest, then the premium price goes up. So it's always a balance of what you want to do. And then the other end of that is, like I said, how long does that benefit last? And so that could be, you could say 2 years or 3 years, or like I've been talking about, 5 years, because I'm thinking of it in terms of Medicaid planning for your assets. You could also pick unlimited. But again, if you pick the best possible outcome, that means the premium is going to be more expensive. Now, the one question I can't answer for you is, what's it going to cost? Because that's just too variable. I just told you 3 variables. There'll be more. It'll also depend on when you buy it in your life. If you buy it as a 25-year-old and you pay for premiums for the next 50 years, it'll be lower. If you buy it at age 50, it'll be higher. So I really can't answer that question, but I would commend you to talk to an insurance provider in your state who can answer that question.
Right. And I've got a question too. This just came into my head as you're talking about this, and also a comment about I can't remember what you said, but the 30-day gap, because a lot of folks might have a new knee replacement and they think, I need to be in, or it makes sense for me to be in a long-term care facility for a few days, maybe 20 or whatever, but not getting into that. But so I think maybe that's what that might be for. But go ahead, Steve, go.
Yeah, there's a point there that I should highlight, which is Medicare. We haven't talked about Medicare coverage at all, and it plays into this. So in your example where you've got a knee replacement, but you can't return home yet, but you anticipate you will, that's Medicare. And so if you leave the hospital, but your physician determines that you need to go into a long-term care facility, but not for a long time, but to heal properly, to get physical therapy in our example, that will be covered probably at a maximum amount of 100 days. But for a short-term stay, that's okay. So you're covered, so you're covered in that circumstance. But let's talk about what you just brought up in the context of you're not going in for a short stay, you're going in for a long stay. As long as you came from a hospital, from a traumatic event, you broke a leg or a hip or whatever, you're going to get 100 days probably of Medicaid or Medicare coverage. Pardon me. Those are so easy to mix up. I know people do it all the time. Even I did it. You'll get Medicare coverage, which will cover that elimination period we just talked about. So 30, 60, 90 days. If you get 100, you've covered that. So maybe you keep the price of your policy a little down by picking a longer elimination period, knowing that is out there for you.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that distinguishing those pieces of that. And I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we've got another one that somebody sent in on our YouTube. I know your life insurance, sometimes you have to get a physical from your doctor to prove how healthy you are or whatnot. Is that the case with long-term care insurance?
Typically not, because it's not a death. Well, most traditional long-term care insurance policies have no death benefit, so they're not really looking at that question. But what they will do is, regardless, it depends on when you buy it. Is your age? It's not going to be so much about your specific physical health. They're going to use an annuitant to figure out, an actuary to figure out what are the odds that you go in and how long will you stay in, and that's how they figure out your price. But
Right.
it's not typical for this type of policy. But they brought up an important point. A popular policy type that they've come out with recently is a hybrid policy that has a life insurance death benefit as well as long-term care coverage. So that could require it, and those are becoming more popular.
Right. Interesting. Okay, back to the YouTube question. For budget planning, how much average range should we consider keeping for long-term care?
So
I know that's very personal to everybody. So
yeah. I mean, I can't answer a dollar amount. I'm trying to decide if the question is geared towards how much should they keep in their personal assets, and that is what I would say is in a way it doesn't matter. Now that's a very flippant answer, and I don't want you to take that literally. But what I'm thinking about is whatever assets you have, you should keep and budget wisely for your life as you're going on with your normal life. Now, should you need long-term care, not long-term care insurance, because that would just be a part of your monthly budget. But should you find that you need to go in a nursing home or your spouse needs to go into a nursing home, at that point, if you have the money to pay for it, you will. You'll need to. And fortunately, if you're married and the spouse is still healthy and living at home, Medicaid rules allow you to keep a great deal of money and your home. So there's a kind of a parachute, or can't think of the metaphor, but there's a protection for the community spouse there. So you don't have to plan in that sense. If you have the money, you get to keep it up to a certain level, and beyond that, you're going to need to spend it down. But this is where I say it's going to be okay, and that's why I said it kind of doesn't matter. Let's say you have very little, you're living paycheck to paycheck. That's a circumstance that a lot of people face. Well, then you're going to run out of money very quickly, right? And in that case, Medicaid will pick you up very quickly as well. You're not going to be left out on the street. If you've legitimately spent down all your money and you don't have that much, that's okay. It's going to be all right. You will be picked up on Medicaid at that point, almost straight away, without even having long-term care insurance. Which again is why I say long-term care insurance is an option. It's a tool in your toolbox, but it's not the only one, and it's going to be okay.
Right. And your message of it's is I hope reassuring to many today. And there's always a safety net of some sort. I will ask you another question. So what are the key legal documents every senior should have in place when planning long-term care? And how do these documents influence the use of long-term care insurance?
So these documents that I'm going to tell you about don't influence the use of it in the sense of like you picking different policies. That won't change. But what you need in place are the same things I tell everyone, which is a power of attorney for healthcare, power of attorney for property, and then a will or a trust that will guide any assets that might remain. So the main tool there are the powers of attorney, again, because someone else is likely going to be making these decisions for you. And I want you to pick that person. I don't want a judge to pick that person because you didn't plan and there has to be a guardianship. I want your decisions to be in control. And the best way you can do that is by picking someone or a couple of someones. You can have successors in case, you might want to say my son and then my daughter or vice versa, and you can pick a few. But those are the most important documents, like I said, so that someone can direct that insurance company to say, now we're going to kick it in, for example. So those are critical, absolutely critical.
Yeah, and again, planning. That's
Planning.
the theme of the day again.
Yep.
I'm got another YouTube question here. Does long-term care insurance pay for in-home care? I think you touched on that, but if you could hit it again.
Typically not. Now, that's not to say that there won't be policies out there that might do that, but it is not typically what it's focused on. And think about it from the standpoint of the insurer. These policies often pay out because the statistics of the number of people who go into nursing homes is going up. Unfortunately, a lot of us will need this care, which means these insurance companies who are also placing a bet, hoping you don't go in to a nursing home, have to pay out oftentimes. And so they are focused largely on the nursing home population, less on the in-home care, because if it's in-home care, a lot of us will use that. In fact, a lot of us will use that without ever going into a nursing home. So that's not typically what you see. Sometimes there are creative ways, and this is where, if you have an interest in this, talk to an elder law attorney in your state, licensed in your state, because maybe you have a life insurance policy that has value in it, and maybe you might be able to tap that to cover that. In other words, that's not a traditional use, but there are possibilities, and the long-term care or the insurance company might be interested if you said, look, I want to pay out some of my plan, my vested interest in my insurance policy to cover my in-home care. They might be willing to listen to that if it benefits them financially in the future, where maybe they have to pay out less. So there are always possibilities. Don't be afraid to ask these questions. But the best way to do it is to talk with an elder law attorney, in my opinion, who's familiar with this, because they might be able to suggest something just like this that we didn't think about until the question came up.
Right. And again, every individual is specific to their situation. So
very much.
Discuss the issue of long-term care insurance and spousal impoverishment protections.
So this is this idea that if you're going into a nursing home and you anticipate that Medicaid is going to pick up your coverage, but you're married and your spouse still lives in the community, is healthy, or let's say healthier, it might not mean healthy, but healthier than you are if you're the one going into the nursing home, you don't want to impoverish them, right? Send them into poverty. And so there are protections for that in every state. And basically the generic rule, if you will, again, not any state, is that you can get to keep about $100,000 worth of cash assets or cash equivalents, a car, your home. Sometimes there's a limit on the value, sometimes there's not, so that community spouse can live there. And they also get your income, or at least a portion of it gets transferred over to them. We're trying to make sure that the healthy spouse doesn't suffer as a result of somebody going in a nursing home. And the federal law and state laws support that policy, that concept. So then where does long-term care insurance fit into that? That's the gap. So I don't really want to tell you go on to Medicaid because maybe the Medicaid experience you will have is not as good as private insurance might provide. So I always think about it in terms of if you have the wherewithal to afford long-term care insurance, then the idea is use that as a gap. You don't have to pick 5 years, as your time period. Maybe you pick 2 years or 3 years. Like I told you, statistically, a lot of people don't live in a nursing home for 5 years. So maybe what you do is you preserve some of your assets, but not all. That's a balancing act. That's, again, something it's good to get advice on in your specific situation. But I think that long-term care insurance can be a very good tool in that regard into figuring out how to protect your spouse in the best way possible.
I'm going to thank you for that. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to close. I don't want to take any more of your time, and you've been so generous with it, and we appreciate that. What are the latest legal developments or changes in legislation that seniors and their families can be aware of regarding long-term care insurance, if there are any?
There's not a ton that I would talk about today. The biggest concern is insolvency of long-term care insurers, and so there's a lot of regulation on that. But that is kind of at a lower, like higher or lower. I'm not sure which is the metaphor, but that's a question more for insurance companies and insurers, less about you. Which is why I urge you, talk to a licensed provider who specializes in long-term care insurance or has a heavy focus in it in your state, because they're going to know which providers they might sound like they're of value, but maybe they're on the edge. They're going to know that, and they're going to be able to advise you properly. So I hope that answers that question.
Yep, very, very good. Thanks again, Steve. This has been fantastic. And I want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guest, Steve Anderson, for sharing his expertise and insights with us today. For those looking for more resources on caregiving, you can find valuable information and support at the Illinois Department of Aging's website, if you're in Illinois, at ilaging, that's ilaging.illinois.gov, and at AARP's caregiving site at aarp.org/caregiving. Please take advantage of these resources to help navigate your caregiving journey. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to continuing our mission of supporting seniors, caregivers, and the entire aging community in Illinois and around the country. Have a wonderful day, and this concludes our virtual event.